Hi everyone and welcome. I'm Alexandra from Stripo, and today we are diving into something that's always on our minds, our inboxes. So, the spam folder, the nightmare of every email marketer. But why do some emails end up there? And it's not just about following the rules. Mailbox providers have a lot of factors they look at: your sending habits, engagement rates, and even your design. And here's the kicker: they decide when your email goes before anyone even opens it. So, I want to introduce today's speaker who will help us break it all down. And our first speaker is Laura Atkins, Word to Device co founder, speaker, educator, writer, and email specialist. She is passionate about demystifying email in general and deliverability in particular. And over the past 25 years, Laura has helped a wide range of clients to develop better relationships through effective email strategies. Hi, Laura.
Hello, how are you?
Nice to meet you. Nice to have you here today.
Thank you for
And
having me.
thank you. And our next speaker, Dmytro Kudrenko, founder and CEO of Stripo. Dmytro is an entrepreneur with over 25 years of experience in software development, including 15 years in email marketing. Dmytro is an expert in email marketing automation, and Dmytro focuses on helping marketers create these emails quickly and without coding. Hi, Dmytro.
Hello, Alexandra. Thank you for introduction. Hello, Laura.
Hello.
Laura and Dmytro today will tell us about what really influences inbox placement, and it's not all about reputation, and how your email design impacts both spam filters and the user experience. Also, they will tell us the truth about BIMI, what it changed and what it doesn't, and how to focus on the signals that matter instead of chasing tactics that don't work. Additionally, they will share a simple 90-day action plan to help improve your deliverability and keep your emails exactly where they should be, right in front of your audience. So let's get started. Dmytro, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And again, Laura, it's great to have you here.
And it's great to be here. I'm so excited.
Thank you. And deliverability, it's like one of these topics everyone knows it is important. But for many marketers, it still feels mysterious. I think it's because of a lot of technical stuff about it. And there is no documentation. There is some best practices, but nobody knows what works, what doesn't work, and it constantly changes. So It's why I'm so happy to discuss this topic today with you. And I would like to start with something very simple. And please, Laura, let's keep everything simple. All this DKIM, DMARC, SPF, DNS, and all this.
I will do my best to just say that's a technical thing. We're not talking about that today.
Yeah, exactly. So let's start from something very basic. And what are the main signals a mailbox provider uses to decide where the email lands before subscriber even opens it? So how they understand it?
So a lot of the signals that they have, so there's signals that we can control, and there are signals that we kind of can't control or that are more kind of baked into our system. But overall, I think what's important to know about signals is that it depends on what information the provider has. So Google and Microsoft and Yahoo, the consumer mailbox providers, they have one set of data. Apple Mail or other companies, they have a completely different set of data. So the signals that happen before you even get into the inbox, before, while you're delivering the mail, they're looking at what's the history of your IP address? Do we get mail from this IP address that's good or bad? They're looking at what's this domain? Is the domain authenticated? If the domain is authenticated, have we seen mail from it before? What happened the last time we accepted mail from this domain? They're looking at the headers. They're looking at what's inside the body of the message. So they're looking at the links in the message. They're looking to see, do you have viruses or malware? They're looking at URLs, all of those kinds of things. And all of those markers have their own reputation. And then they're saying, what have we seen from mail like this before? And then they make a decision based on all of those signals and all of those factors.
Yeah, I see. But, we not always can control all the stuff. For example, if we have shared IP addresses, or we just only started to do. So how do authentication and the sender reputation and engagement history, if we have some, or some compliance, or how we clean up our list, how they work together as one trust system?
So I think part of it is that we have to think about what they know. So no, we don't always have control over our IP reputation because we're sharing an IP, but we have control over what email service provider we choose. And part of the decision in choosing an email service provider is choosing one that does a decent job of keeping the bad guys off their shared IPs. And that the ESP itself makes sure that their customers meet a minimum standard. And so if you're coming in off an IP, even if it's shared IP, if that shared IP has a good history because your ESP is taking care of things, then you're going to have a better introduction into the mailbox. If you're just starting up, and if this is the first mail that you're sending from this domain, or the first bulk mail that you're sending from this domain, don't start with 1 million addresses. There's, for one thing, that 1 million addresses, there's no way really that 1 million people opted into your brand new domain before you even sent mail. And so a big volume for a brand new domain is a signal that maybe this list was purchased. Maybe this list is an opt-in. Maybe there's something going on here and we'll treat it a little more suspiciously. So the audience that you're sending to and the addresses that you're sending to are actually a really big signal. How many of our users are you sending to? How many have you sent to before? If you go from 0 to 10,000 or 0 to 100,000, that's not a good signal. If you go from 0 to 5,000, that's not a bad signal. That's a normal signal. So there's all of these kinds of pieces about what would it look like if this was organic growth? What would it look like if this was really an opt-in message? What would it look like if this sender really had permission? And I think in a lot of ways, it's the audience piece that we don't talk about a lot, because when, companies are making decisions when filters are making decisions, they're looking at how many emails you've sent before, how many emails you've sent in, the past hour or the past 24 hours or the past 30 days or whatever. But they're looking at that and they're saying, who are you sending to? Which of our users are you sending to? And I know we all know about spam traps, and we all know that there's these addresses out there that are not in use or have never been used before. And so if you try and send mail to them, then clearly it's spam because nobody opted in from that address. But there's also other sets of addresses that tend to end up on similar mailing lists. So I know for our system, let me see if I can explain it a little easier. For our system, we have a lot of addresses here. And I can see that sometimes we'll get spam in, and that spam will hit, this 4 set of addresses. And I know, oh, they bought that list over there. Or it'll hit a different set of 3 addresses, and I'll know, oh, they hit that list over there. And so the actual addresses on your list can also be a signal as to whether or not this is a good list or a bad list, this is opt-in mail or this is not opt-in mail. And those are the kinds of signals we don't talk about a lot, but they're there.
I see. So providers know about us much more than we think, because of they have also the context, how the sender, how this, email owner of email interact with other emails. Yeah. And did he receive your email before this bulk campaign? So they can guess that you bought this list or maybe rent this list. So they can guess a lot of information. about you.
They can guess and infer a lot of information about what you're sending, and in ways that you can't pay somebody to list hygiene off.
I see, but can we know what they know about how they think about us? Can be just any services like I don't know, Postmasters, where we can know that, oh, you think that I'm a spammer, or maybe you think I have a good reputation and I can use this knowledge to send more emails, or maybe do some risky things.
You can do, certainly, if you have a big list, if you have a good reputation, you can get away with some stuff that smaller companies with less of a reputation can't get away with. That's pretty clear across the board. I think it's interesting, though, one of the things that is happening is Google is actually, and they threatened to do this back in October, and they've not done it yet, but they've been threatening to take away their reputation data. So in Google Postmaster Tools, they have your domain and your IP reputation, and they're threatening to take that away, and they've not built that into Google Postmaster Tools version 2, and they're not planning on it as far as I know, and from things that they've said. And I think that is an interesting perspective and should make us think about that reputation isn't a thing. Reputation is a process, and reputation isn't like, this is your reputation, but your reputation changes with every send, and that metric modifies and it changes. And also, the reputation that you have as a domain in particular is a mix of the mail that you're sending from that domain. At Google, it also includes where that domain has showed up in other emails. So if you are using affiliates or whatever, and they're using your domain in their affiliate mail, and they're doing some kind of weird stuff, that's going to hit your reputation. Google has also said in the past that they're actually using website and SEO data as well as part of their reputation data in email. So there's all of this data that they're looking at. And I think that the reputation data that they were showing you was more about, we saw mail from this DKIM domain, and this is what that mail is. But it wasn't capturing the full picture of what reputation was.
So it's not only about email. I have whole infrastructure of my domain, my reputation in SEO, in affiliate program, in some maybe
yep, anywhere that your domain
site
might
from
be.
third party.
Anywhere,
Okay.
and Google, I think, is an aggressive example, and they are kind of if you can do it, Google's going to do it. If you can glean the information, Google's going to glean the information, and they're going to use it. Other providers don't have access to as much data as Google does, and so there's a difference there. But these machine learning engines that make the delivery decisions, they are absolutely going to have an impact no matter where your domain is online and what you're seeing from it.
It's interesting, but if reputation is so not, I have no idea what scores my reputation as a high or low. Can we at least understand if my reputation is changing from high to medium, how I can get an idea what happened, what I did wrong, because of sometimes I do nothing, but my reputation is going up or going down, and I want to control this thing. I don't want to be
I think
as a passive player here.
Again, looking at Google specifically, because we have that reputation data, nobody else is sharing that data with us. But looking at Google specifically, what they're looking at is how their users are interacting with the messages. And they're saying, hey, look, when we get mail from with these URLs, or when we get mail from this domain, then our users are generally happy. They're not reporting it as spam. They are interacting with it in ways that indicate to us that the user likes the mail. And then we're going to put it in the inbox, or we're going to put it in a tab, or whatever we're going to do. But we're not going to just drop it in the spam folder. We think this is generally good mail. But your reputation is really all about, what have you done in the past, and what do they know about you?
Yeah.
So and if it drops,
Yeah, if I have a bad reputation, can I just change a head or like change a domain and continue my business?
So yes and no. If you have a bad domain reputation and you change your domain, you've basically changed your identity. So I tend to think of IPs and domains and authentication and all of those pieces as that's saying who I am. I'm standing up and saying, I am Word to the Wise, or I am Stripo, or I am, whoever I am, I'm standing up and saying, this is my mail. And then as Google and other reputation assessors pull together all of this information about how people are interacting with my mail, where my mail is coming from, what my how popular my domain is on the web, as they're pulling all of that data together, they can attach that to that identity. When you change your domain, well, you've just kind of like ripped the identity out from that reputation. And so you're basically starting over from zero. Now,
Yeah,
if you don't change any of your behavior, more than likely you're going to eventually develop the same reputation, and that's going to stick to that new identity. And then you're going to be in a position where you get the same deliverability. It doesn't always necessarily work that way, but in concept, that's how it's supposed to work.
yeah, and
That
sometimes
just changing the domain doesn't change anything other than you take away the identity and you substitute in a new one. So yes, you can
yeah,
change your hair.
yeah, but sometimes if he can recognize it's still me for the same business, it can join my like previous statistic and previous reputation to the new one, and it's kind of like manipulation, and maybe it can be even bad signal.
Well, maybe it's the same content in your messages. Maybe it's the same format, maybe it's the same content, maybe it's the same kind of keywords or your brand voice. And so Google can say, oh, hey, we've not seen this brand before, but wow, it sounds a whole lot like that brand over there. And so, yeah, we can pull
Yeah,
them together.
exactly.
The other thing is, and I don't have any like actual evidence that this is happening, but I've seen a lot of data that suggests it's true, is that if you're doing, say, cold email or you're doing business outreach mail through Google, and you have like 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 domains in a single Google Workspace account, Google shares the reputation of all those domains in that Workspace account because they know that all those domains are the same organization because you have told them that all those domains are the same organization.
It makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
but you just mentioned that mailbox providers also looking to the engagement signals. But to be honest, it looks like we have very different engagement signals because of opens and clicks with all this caching and restriction now we have for tracking is different. So
Yes.
how we can know which data is a real? So real open, reals, I don't know, scrolling time they spent on email. Can we get this information?
So as senders, we can only get information based on what happens on our systems. So when we send an email and we track opens, or we send an email and we're trying to track scrolling time or reading time, that is based on an interaction that email has with the servers that we control.
I see. So we have one data and they have another data.
They have another set of data, so that Google will have different data if you're using Gmail in an Android, using the Gmail app on an Android phone, using the Gmail app on an iPhone, or if you're using Gmail webmail. They have all different signals for the users from all of those different places. And if you're using, say, Outlook on the desktop or Apple Mail on the desktop with Google, then Google has a lot less information about you in particular and how you're interacting with mail than they do from all of their users that are using the information using their mail clients. So
Okay.
when we think about engagement data, we really need to think about what kind of access does the mailbox provider have to our systems, or to the end user systems, not our systems. So they're
I
going to
see.
know what an open is because they're going to see that that message is open on a user's phone, or they're going to see that that message is open in a web page that maybe they can tell is at the top of the stack and is on the front, or maybe they can tell it's hidden in a tab or something like that. You know, these are the questions. I don't know if they have access to that data. From my perspective and from what I know of Google, if Google can get that data, they're going to get that data.
Yeah, does it mean that it's better to track statistic based on the mailbox provider? So separately from Gmail, separately from Hotmail and other providers, Apple Mail?
Yeah, I think it is very useful, particularly if you think you're having delivery problems. It is very useful to separate things by mailbox provider. So if you've got Gmail users, put them all in a bucket and don't compare your open rates or don't compare any of your other data to your entire thing. Compare your Google Gmail users to your Gmail folks. Microsoft has tons of domains. But you can generally tell which of the free mailbox providers or Microsoft providers. It's like they've got a bunch, but the sender can tell that from the MX that you're connecting to. And then put all of the Microsoft folks in a bucket. And then if you have the kind of data that says this user is reading through Apple Mail, so I know, if we see an open from an Apple Mail, we can put that into an Apple Mail bucket. And even if it's a Gmail address, that actually goes in the Apple Mail bucket because Apple Mail has a completely different. And so it does make things more complicated, and it does make tracking things more complicated. But if you think you're having delivery problems, you've got to go down to that very granular level in order to identify where the problem is.
So what should we do? Should we check like group our reports by a mixed record, or just by domain in email address, or by some user agent, or how we can separate, because of nobody knows if it's a Gmail or some company domain who really interact with my email and mailbox provider.
Gmail makes it easy because gmail.com is all handled by one domain. Google, they have gmail.com. I think like in Germany, they've got googlemail.com or googleemail.com. But other than that, those are their only domains. And so you can do Google pretty easily. For Microsoft, I would, if you can't go down the granularity of looking at where the MXs are, I would look at outlook.com, hotmail.com, live.com. Maybe if you are in a non-US country, go to, say, the .country domains for those, so outlook.ie or hotmail.ie. Yahoo, again, they have a lot of domains, but I would just use yahoo.com and AOL.com. But again, you want to compare those for themselves. And you're always going to miss data. You're always going to miss data. But if you kind of limit it and just say, okay, this is just I would call it sentinel data. So these are the ones that we can monitor. And so this is what this says about mail going to Microsoft domains. And we're just going to extrapolate out and say that all of the Microsoft domains are doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's clear. But can we also separate the statistic? So if we have opens and clicks, can we know that this open was done by real person or by bot? So can we separate statistic from this perspective? Oh no.
So and that's not, and actually I was just asking this. I was trying to work out some stuff about opens with some colleagues of mine. When you remove bot opens, so for, just to make everything really clear, what a bot open is when your mail goes into Gmail, or when your mail goes into Apple Mail, or when your mail goes into, I think, Yahoo, and there's probably some other providers, but those are kind of the big three. Those providers will build the email before the user reads it. And by build the email, I mean they fetch all of the images, they put it together, it's sitting there, it's in their mailbox, it's ready to go. They don't have to do any web queries to show it. What that means is that when the user does come in and open it, it's there and they don't need to go refetch everything. They don't go and redesign the email and pull. So you don't know when it happens. You don't know when that open happened.
I see.
A lot of ESPs and a lot of folks are recommending that you remove all of those bot clicks from your statistics. But the problem with that is that when you remove those values from the statistics, you're actually hiding people who really opened and read your mail.
Exactly.
Because
if
in
it was
that,
cached, yeah,
it was cached. So you're missing data. And we don't have a good answer to that because all we can know is what data comes off of our system. But what I've kind of moved to for opens is I actually like bot opens. I think they're great because what they tell you is the mail went to the inbox.
exactly. Yeah.
The mail went to an inbox of somebody who is actively reading the mail because Google doesn't build the message until the user logs into their account. Same with Apple. So you found a real user. The user is using that mailbox, and the mailbox is active, and the mail was in the inbox. So I actually have kind of replaced any of my usage of inbox testing and inbox seed accounts with just open rates. And then I just monitor open rates over time and I watch them go. And if I see those open rates like fall even 10%, I'm like, oh, we have a delivery problem. We're going to the spam
Exactly.
folder.
So what we just said that open rate is the deliverability metrics. It's not engagement metrics, it's deliverability metric now.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's a great insight. And what about the clicks? We can trust clicks, or clicks not?
You can mostly trust clicks. There are, and this happens a little bit more in the B2B space, where your filtering appliance and your security appliance that sits on the edge will follow all the links in a message during delivery. And in fact, I had one incident a few years ago. It's been a while now, but a couple of years ago, where someone saw clicks on an email before it had been delivered. And what had happened was, what we think happened was the mail came in, the security appliance said, oh, no, not right now. We're going to temp fail this, come back in a little while. And then while it was sitting in the queue waiting to be redelivered, they went and fetched all the links and they followed all the links to make sure everything was okay. So we had click data before we had delivery data. So it does happen.
But usually we can filter them, yeah, because of user agent or because of
user agent can sometimes work. Early click can work if you have, and I've seen this with some of my clients, if you have, 65 links in an email and literally 65 links in an email and all 65 links were clicked within 5 seconds of delivery, you can be pretty sure that wasn't a person.
Yeah, especially if they click on unsubscribe link, yeah?
Right.
All of them.
Exactly. And this is why you don't have the click on the unsubscribe and you unsubscribe them. You make them go to a web page and click on something on the web page.
So, but double opt-out is okay too, especially also for these bot clicks, yeah?
Right. And just make them confirm on the website, yes, I do want to unsubscribe. Don't send them another email and say, did you really mean to unsubscribe? Just make them do it on the webpage. Don't do that. Exactly. I have seen that happen.
Because of one of the best practice says that when somebody clicks on email to unsubscribe, you have to unsubscribe immediately, and on a landing, give them option to return subscription back. But in cases when bot clicks, they never click on the link on the landing page.
Right. So you want to have a click on the landing page just to make sure that it's not the bots.
Yeah, how we can improve all this stuff? Certainly, we need to authenticate our email, the key, MSPF, the mark, all this stuff. And now is a lot of hype, not now, it's several years, a lot of hype around BIMI. So what does it actually give to a sender today? Is it, you think, is important to know or to have BIMI?
I don't necessarily think BIMI is a huge win for a lot of companies. The process to get BIMI is pretty involved. You have to have a DMARC in place for your entire company, not just your marketing mail, but for the whole company. You have to go through a certification process at a third-party provider. And what it gives you then is it gives you a logo in the inbox for 14 providers across the world. That's it. I've checked.
Yeah.
I actually checked this morning. There's 14 providers in the world that support BIMI.
Yeah, but it's $1,000. So about from 1 to 2, you have to pay every year and do some certification.
Yep, you have to pay a couple thousand every year for certification. You do have to have all of that DMARC infrastructure in place. So,
but anyway, you must to have DMARC infrastructure. So it's not the question
absolutely.
to discuss.
Yeah, you cannot. And in fact, the reason we have BIMI is because there were two reasons for it. One, the group that came up with BIMI was trying to get people to adopt DMARC restrictive reject policies. So this was the carrot as part of the stick of they couldn't bully people into it, and they couldn't convince people to go to DMARC P equals reject. And so they said, well, what if we give the marketers a logo in the inbox? And then they'll convince their companies to go to DMARC P equals reject.
Yeah, but there are a lot of like AMP for Gmail, the same stuff. So AMP doesn't work until you have right authentication process.
Right. And then the other piece is that going full DMARC can be expensive, particularly if you're a bigger organization. I know some of the consultants and some of the consulting companies out there, and if you're a bigger organization, I would not advise trying to go on your own. Go and outsource it to somebody or work with a partner that can see a lot of mail and has a lot of expertise. But you're talking, $100,000, $200,000 to go through the process of getting DMARC in place. And it can be expensive and it can be time consuming and all of that. And then you have to pay yearly for the BIMI mark. Certainly big companies have done it because it's for them, it's not a big thing. I think for smaller companies, it's less important.
Yeah, am I right thinking that BIMI don't really change your deliverability, change your visibility? So how your email looks, you have some special checkbox, and maybe it's kind of primary account or something like this.
It's not a deliverability signal. It is an inbox display signal. Now, with that being said, to go through the process of getting BIMI means that you generally have to clean up your authentication and make sure that all your I's are dotted and all your T's are crossed and everything. So it can, going through the process to get to DMARC, to get to a place where you can have BIMI, might help you clean up some of the rough edges of your marketing program, and cleaning up the rough edges might improve your overall reputation. And so you can see some better deliverability now that you have BIMI, but it was not the BIMI, it was the getting to the place where you could have BIMI.
I see. By the way, now deliverability is not as easy just to be in inbox. You also have to be in the right place in inbox. Now there are so many like promotion and social and orders now, purchases and some custom folders, and they're more and more complicated. Can you explain why same email type sometimes lands in primary and sometimes in promotion, and how we can change this if we need to do it?
The promotions tab has now been around since it's been more than a decade.
It's a decade for Gmail.
Yeah,
yes.
it's like
exactly
2013, 2014. Yeah. And every time Google has made a change with their spam filters or with their SEO ranking or everything, it's taken generally about 2 to 6 weeks for everybody to figure it out and to figure out how to not game the system, but how to make the system work for them. We are more than a decade into tabs, and nobody knows how to make mail go to a particular tab.
Should we? Sorry for interrupting. Should we try to find the way to be in the primary, or should we find the better? Look better in the promotion if it's promotion, or in the social if it's social.
Yeah, I think you've just got to accept that Google is going to Google. They're going to do what they want to do, and that there's very little influence that we can have. And so what we need to focus on is the right message to the right user. And if it ends up in promotions, well, yeah, the user is going to have to take some action. And I think marketers in general sometimes forget that there's actually a human there. And they treat an email address as, well, if I just send enough emails, then I can, convince people to buy, or I can convince the email address. They forget it's a person. And so it's a person who has to take an action, and you're trying to influence that action. But getting to the promo tab versus the inbox, you're going to get what you're going to get. And I just actually saw an article yesterday it came out a couple of weeks ago, but I just saw it when in January, I think Google broke their tabs completely. They broke inbox filtering, and everything was just in the primary tab. One company did an analysis, and what they discovered was that their customer unsubscribes spiked. Yeah. So when all of that mail went to the inbox, people were just like, I don't want this in my inbox, unsubscribe. So I think you need to be careful about wanting to be in the inbox, because you're then, at that point, you're interrupting people in their space where they're in their inbox because they're trying to find something, or they're talking with somebody, or whatever it is. And they're not in a position where they're interested in being marketed to. When they go into the promo tab, they're interested in being marketed to. And so it's probably less intrusive to be in a place where Google puts you.
Yeah, and I think if it's promotional, it has to be in a promotional, because if it's promotional, it's why they invented this promotional tab.
Right, and I think we're getting to a point, and I know certainly from my mailbox, I've been trialing some software, and I've gotten into a few places, and the amount of mail that I'm getting from these companies is like overwhelming. And half of my decision-making process is, how much did your welcome stream annoy me? It's like, how aggressive and how much crap did I get? Because I did the initial round of things and the introduction, and sign up and create the free account and all of that. But then I'm really busy. And then I had to put it aside for a couple days because I had clients come in, and now I had to prep for the webinar. And so I don't have all of that time. And so now I have all of these messages in my inbox, and it's like, oh my God, just give me 10 minutes to catch my breath here, And so while I understand the marketing piece, I think marketers have gotten really aggressive. And they are at a point where not just, a single, if it was only one that I had tested, I wouldn't have noticed that. But I was testing 3 at the same time. And so they're each sending me 3 emails every 2 days. And now all of a sudden it's like, no, go away.
I see.
So I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that everybody's being really aggressive with email right now. And so you're competing for attention with a lot of people. And you're competing for attention in a space where I think consumers, particularly the more savvy consumers, are getting more and more cautious about really aggressive email marketing campaigns.
Yeah. And I just want to prove your story about the Gmail mistake when they pushed everything into primary. There are a lot of stories about the email journey when they accidentally went from promotional to primary, so the next stop is spam. Because of
Yep.
when promotion in the primary, people click on a spam, you have a
Yep.
peak of a spam, and the next landing, next stop could be in the wrong place.
Yep.
So sometimes it's good to be in promotional. And you mentioned about like when you send a lot of emails. I read an article, I think it was from Chad White, about suggestion how to roll out. So so Gmail roll out managed subscription.
Yep.
And in the managed subscription, you can see the frequency of email. And they sort the subscription based on the frequency. So if you in very aggressive email sending, you would be in the top of the list from email to unsubscribe. Do you have any, I don't know, suggestion how this feature have to change your politic as a sender?
So there are always going to be people who like getting a lot of email. And I tried to go into Gmail and to see what the managed subscriptions look like, and it's not rolled out to my Gmail account now yet. So this is something I am working completely off of what I have read online, because I can't test it because I don't have managed subscriptions.
Interesting. I have it. Maybe
Yeah.
because of
maybe
they
it's not
just
in
load
Ireland
it
yet.
by region, or I don't know, or maybe because of you read all email, you don't need to unsubscribe.
That's my
you read
US.
all of them.
That's my US one. I don't know. Anyway, so I don't have access to it yet, and that's my Gmail account that's like from 2007 or something. It's a very old Gmail account.
Yeah.
But I think it misses the point, which is if you're sending mail that the user likes, again, you're treating the user as if it's an automaton, and is as if what you present to them, they're just gonna do. And I mean, there is a certain truth to that people people will just like do what they're gonna do, and they'll always take the easy choice, or most of the time they'll take the easy choice. But I think that when you're looking at your subscriptions, certainly if I saw it and I saw, this one has sent you 30 mails in the last 30 days, and I went, oh, well, but that's Heather Cox Richardson's newsletter, and I read that every morning. Well, I'm not going to unsubscribe from that just because it's a lot of mail. Or, it's this vendor that I like, and I don't always buy from them, but I like seeing their mail and I like seeing their new announcements. And yeah, they're very aggressive and they send me a lot of mail, but I like that mail, so I'm not going to unsubscribe.
Exactly, absolutely with you. Especially so many discussion around technical workarounds, how to do something, how Gmail works, but answer is always the same. Just care about your subscribers. Send something interesting, something useful, something helpful for them, and you don't need to care a lot about spam and about in which position you in a managed subscription list in Gmail, because of if you send good emails, nobody would like to unsubscribe.
Right. And some people like get notices on their social media on a daily or hourly basis. So, like LinkedIn, everybody makes a joke about how aggressive they are, but to be fair to LinkedIn, they give you a lot of control over what email you get and don't get. So, I get email from LinkedIn, but I'm quite happy with it because it's at a cadence that I'm happy with, and they've given me all of those options. One of my clients a few years ago was a major social media company, and they send something like, and I looked at this and I went, no, you must be remembering wrong, but it's like they send like 250 million emails a day. Like they send 250 million emails a day, and their delivery's fine. And they send multiple emails and, notices of you got this on your wall or whatever. And, they send a lot of email. And so, yeah, you're going to see those high numbers, but that doesn't mean that that's all unwanted mail.
And for big senders, to be honest, it's very hard to spoil the reputation because of they sending the billions email. Even if they send some wrong email, it's not a big problem.
It's literally it's lost in the noise. But for
but
those
for
of us
small
who are
companies,
sending, If you're
Every
sending
small thing is
100,000
important.
emails, yep, that's it exactly.
Yeah, but we are as an email editor. We have a lot of questions. How we can change something in design to be in the right place in inbox? Maybe if we have a lot of images, we definitely will be in promotional. Or we have to remove all images, or number of links, or the way how we code email. Or do you have any tricks and suggestion? What should we avoid, and maybe what should we do to be in some particular place?
So again, I think that a lot of the how your email is delivered and where it goes to is more natural language processing. So it's not even machine learning or AI, but it's the whole natural language processing. And so they're actually looking at, does this look like it's a promotional mail, or does this look like it's an update mail? And they're actually looking at the language in there. In terms of formatting, I think generally using your own templates are fine. Using other people's templates are okay. But one of the things that I would caution you is sometimes you can find like these free services online that will let you design an email, and then they'll spit out the code and you can go ahead and put that into wherever. If it's a free service online and not one that's being provided by your ESP or whatever, you need to be really careful, because what could happen is that that service is also used by spammers. And so they will leave clues inside the content and inside the HTML structure, maybe in some of the signals that they use. Maybe they'll even put in a comment and advertisement for their coding platform, whatever they're using. And if that kind of signal is in the body of the message, even if it's hidden in the HTML and the user never sees it, and you don't see it if you don't go in and look at the HTML, then that can affect your delivery.
I see.
So use
And
reputable frameworks. Don't go find a random framework.
yeah, I like the thesis now that also accessibility now is a part of deliverability too,
Yeah.
because of it's how easy providers can understand your email. If it's only image email, so it's hard, even if you have a clear message there, but email provider cannot read what's inside. So
Yeah, the accessibility question is interesting, and I think a lot of the stuff that you need to do for accessibility is things that deliverability folks have been recommending for a long time.
exactly.
Put the text in. Give them alt text, let people be able to see things. And it was more along the lines of, the easier you make it to process your mail, whether it be for a screen reader or whether it be for a spam filter, the easier the less likely it is that they're going to go, oh, this is dodgy, right? If you make it very clear who you are, so you authenticate your mail and you make it very clear what you're doing, and so the structure of the email is all there in plain text, then the filters are going to look at it and go, well, they're all upstanding, they're giving us all the data, we don't need to really worry about it, and we can just deliver it where it needs to go. But when you're starting to try and kind of hide things and be a little dodgy and play around with stuff, then it starts to be, what are they doing and what are we missing? And then, okay, so if we think maybe it's not okay, maybe we'll just put it in the spam folder. And that's what happens.
Yes. And it's the wrong place for our emails. It's definitely a wrong place. So it's
Yeah,
better
that's
to.
absolutely the wrong place.
Oh, I just found that we're almost out of time. So the final question, if someone leaves the webinar with very little time, what is the most impactful thing they should do in the next few months? So what you would be like your key recommendation in deliverability?
So my key recommendation would be to make sure that you have all of your authentication in place. Make sure you have that in place. And then know what your Google Postmaster Tools looks like, know what your data looks like. And then make sure that overall you have those textual bits inside the email and you're not just sending all image emails. make it clearer both to your users and to the filters who you are, what you're sending, and that you're on the up and up.
Yeah, so basic stuff. Just do what you must to do. Do authentication first before you start your email.
Yep. Do your authentications first, and then look at your audience. Look at what's the size of your audience. How many people, how many of those email addresses have opened in the last 90 days? How many have opened in the last 356 days, 365? What have they been doing? Have they been interacting with your mail? Is it getting to their inbox? All of that kind of thing. Those are kind of the audience, the authentication, and the content of the message.
So if we have a good authentication, it doesn't really, don't care about all this technical stuff. Think about your recipients. Be helpful.
Think about the recipients. Yep.
Yeah, it's a great suggestion. Thank you. And do we have questions?
We have a lot of questions.
We have it. And sorry, yeah.
Hi again. Yes, we have questions, and the first one. Are there differences in how fast mailbox providers react to slow problems, like decline in engagement over months versus a sudden issue like a bad campaign or risky list?
So yes, certainly what we've seen is if you have just kind of declining engagement over a few months, they might start to test your delivery. So what will happen is if you're kind of mailing the same list over and over and you're kind of wearing out your subscribers, some of the providers will throw a little bit of that mail into the spam folder and see what happens. And what they're looking for is, do those subscribers go find the mail in the spam folder and pull it out? Do they say, this isn't spam, you got it wrong? If they don't, then they might throw a little bit more in. And then they might start with, if you've never sent mail, if you get a brand new subscriber and you're sending a first mail to the subscriber, they'll put that in the spam folder. And so they'll kind of start to mess with your deliverability, and they'll start to kind of see, do our subscribers or do our users really want mail from this sender? And so you can kind of start to see that as a declining engagement over months. And then eventually they'll escalate it to the point where all of your mail is going to the spam folder, and then they start blocking you at the edge, and then they start temp failing you. The sudden issue things like a bad campaign or a very risky list, or your ESP account was compromised and somebody came in and started sending out phishing through your account authenticated as you, which does happen. If that happens, they'll generally slam the door really quick on mail like that, and they'll start blocking it, particularly if it's a phishing thing or something like that. But if you fix it, so if you secure your account, or if you take away the risky list, or you go back to sending what worked before, and I might suggest slowing down sends for a couple days, limiting the number of people you send to, all of that kind of thing. Do a slow warm up, or do a quick warm up. You should see that deliverability will pop back up pretty quickly, because these problems happen. The filters understand, and the people who run the filters understand that problems like this happen. They're unintentional, and so the filters do recover pretty quickly. But if you've had a long period of time where stuff is kind of degrading, it can take a while to get things back to normal and back to where you're happy.
Yeah, exactly, agree. And also I would add, or I don't know how you think about it, maybe also compare the deliverability and engagement metrics for the same groups, the same segment. For example, for new audience. So when you look to all your database, some content just maybe not very active now, and you cannot see the changes in difference. But when you see somebody who subscribed the last 3 months, it's pretty stable and engaged audience, and check the number for them, maybe it's not so bad.
Right.
Thank you for your insights. And we have the next one. When a brand suddenly sees a drop in inbox placement, what should they focus on in the first 24-70 hours, and what can wait until later?
So focus on, I would look at audience, I would look at content, Sometimes these sudden drops in inbox placement means that you've added in a link that's been a bad link. I always suggest you look at your website security, because sometimes we have seen sudden drops in inbox placement, and what happens was their website's been hacked and there's an entirely different set of emails going out with a phishing link that points to your website, and that affects your entire domain reputation and affects all of your mail. And unless you go and you get that phishing page off of your website and secure your website again, you're gonna be in a world of pain for a long time. And I always recommend this, and there have been a couple people who have come back and said, "Oh, you were right. That actually happened. We didn't think, but we didn't think our website was hacked, but our website was hacked." So look in the first 24 to 72 hours. First of all, just take a breath, because sometimes it will just be a blip. Sometimes you will see a tank for like a single send, and then it'll all come back, and who knows what happened. Sometimes the filters break. Sometimes they break the filters, which is different. You know, they rolled out a filter that they shouldn't have rolled out, and they roll it back. So sometimes I generally recommend that people wait 1 to 2 sends to see if this is consistent. But also at that point, you want to be looking at your website. You want to be talking to some other folks and see, is this across the board, or is this just us? But just keep a really close eye on it. If it goes longer than 24 to 72 hours, audience, always look at the audience, and security. Those are the 2 things.
Thank you so much.
Okay. So security is the first thing we have to check. Yeah, and the second, check if we do something unusual. And
Yep.
I would also recommend to check by domain first. So it never drop in the same period of time for all domains. So maybe it's happened only for Gmail, and you know that it's exactly there. You check your reputation, go to Postmaster or something like that. But if it drops everywhere, it's definitely a security problem.
Yep, absolutely.
And the main advice, to take a breath.
Yes, take a breath.
Never
Don't
stop
panic yet.
breathing. Yeah.
Yeah, we have one more. Thanks for your insights. From your experience, which email design or content habits most often hurt deliverability, even though they look harmless to marketers?
So there's not very many that are. I would say that if you put a lot of comments, like a lot of comments in your messages, that can look problematic. A lot of the hidden things that you do, if they're kind of outside the ordinary, those will trigger things. But in general, as long as it's not, you're not trying to put JavaScript in, and you're not trying to do things that are going to look really weird, and you don't put in the virus code, you're probably okay. So I don't think there's not a lot in terms of design or content that is affecting deliverability. The design is not as much an issue as a lot of people think it is. Except when it is, and that's generally because you've used some dodgy code framework that leaves bits and pieces in there and signals in there that say, this is dodgy code framework that's being used by spammers, and so clearly anybody who uses them is a spammer, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I also
So make
would
sure you
say
know
that
what's on it.
sometimes marketers like some experiments with some hype phrases in the subject lines that don't really correspond to the value of your mail. So when you try to manipulate people, sometimes inbox manipulate with you. So I think.
Yep.
Thank you. And we have the last question. Are there any differences between how different email clients decide whether the email goes to spam or is delivered to the inbox? Or do they all stick to the same rules or guidelines?
Deep breath. So yes and no, because of course everything in deliverability is a yes and a no. And I'd say it depends, but apparently that is something where us deliverability people aren't allowed to say. So certainly the deliverability rules that most companies and most senders work on are, do we think that this mail is wanted by the recipient? Like that is the rule, and that is the guideline that every mail filter is looking at. Is it safe? And is it wanted? Those are the two rules that everybody looks like. How they determine whether or not something is safe, or how they determine whether or not something is wanted, is different. They generally get to kind of the same answer across the board, but you will see differences. And in fact, if you ever see me on the Email Geeks Slack and somebody mentions Microsoft, it's like, Microsoft is gonna Microsoft. And their rules are like completely inscrutable at the moment. And they're like putting so much mail in the spam folder that nobody thinks should go in the spam folder except for Microsoft. And they're being very difficult about all of those kinds of things. So there are differences in the providers, and they're making changes, but for the most part, they're just trying to evaluate whether or not the recipient wants that mail and whether or not that mail is safe.
Yeah.
Dmitro, do you have
Completely
something?
agree. Just want to say great thank you, Laura, for your all answers, for whole hour being with us, answering the questions. Thank you very much.
Well,
For me,
thank you
it was
so much for
very-
having me.
Thank you so much, both. They were great insights, and as in life, we have to take a breath if we have some problems with our inbox. But I wish you, everyone who joined us today, all your emails to get to your audience. The webinar recording will be available on our YouTube channel, and also we will send the recording with useful materials and with links to Laura's Word to Device blog articles. Thank you so much. See you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.